Hey friends, ever found yourself putting off a study session? Well, you're not alone. I've also been there. And today I'm gonna share practical tips and strategies on how to conquer procrastination so that you can make consistent progress in your language learning journey. But to find a solution that works for you, we first need to understand why you're actually procrastinating. And I boiled it down to 3 main reasons. The first one is that you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you don't know where to start, or you just have too high goals. Then the second one is that you have a lack of motivation. And the third one is that you want to do everything at once. You don't know how to prioritize tasks, and you would ideally like to do everything right now. So you start a bunch of different things, but don't really get far in any of the tasks, and then you basically end up doing nothing or achieving nothing. So yeah, those are the 3 main reasons, and now we are gonna discuss what you can do about those things. So let's talk about the first issue. Having too high ambitions and too high goals. Of course, setting high goals feels really good when we are in the planning stage and when we think about what we could accomplish and how we would feel if we're able to sit the N3 in 6 months down the line. But we oftentimes forget that there are also other responsibilities in life that we also have to cater to, and that we don't always have the energy we think we would have. So it's not that every week is ideal, and we also have to plan for those days where we feel really low, unmotivated, and just simply can't get a lot of things done, maybe because work gets busy or there are some other things in the road blocking us to our success. And the problem is, once we fall back on our goals, we kind of start to feel bad because we don't achieve the things we wanted to do. So we kind of build resentment towards those goals, and then we tend to put off working on them even more, because as humans we're basically wired to avoid negative emotions, so we start to procrastinate. So that's why it's really important to be realistic when setting goals. And one strategy that I found works really good for me is that I will just write down everything I want to achieve with learning Japanese. For example, I would like to get better at speaking, hold a decent conversation, write the N3, be able to recognize maybe 1,000 kanji, for example. And then I look at those goals, and then depending on how much there is and what I want to accomplish, I try to reduce the goal by 25 or 50%, or I will double the time I will allow myself for those goals. So maybe I stick to the goals, but then I'm saying, okay, I don't want to achieve this in 6 months, but in 12 months. So this way I kind of stretch those goals a little bit further apart, and I give myself more time to breathe and to achieve those things. I found this to be definitely more helpful. Of course, there's always room for failure, and you won't always be perfect at the start, but you can just try to experiment what works for you. I also tend to plan in regular breaks, so that if something comes up or I'm just not able to study because I got sick, for example, then I still have time to catch up and am not constantly falling behind my goals. So when we consider language learning, you could, for example, plan in 1 or 2 rest days, maybe on the weekend where you don't study at all. And when you fall back, maybe during the week, then you can catch up on one of those days, for example. Or I did, I planned on studying every day, but I also planned in days where I have not so much on my plate, so that when I fall back on one of the other days, I can catch up on a day where I don't have a lot of things planned. And with setting really high goals, there's also the fear of failure often involved. For me, the most helpful thing was to reframe failure as not something that's bad, but something I can learn from. And that failure is just something that shows me, okay, this didn't work, so I have to go back to my drawing board, adjust my strategy, and then everything that doesn't work brings me a little bit closer to a thing that might be working. And this also helped me in my professional life, for example, when it comes to different jobs I tried and that didn't work maybe. So yeah, you can also apply this to other areas of your life, of course. The second issue is not knowing where to start. This often comes from your goal being too complex. So it could help to break it down into more manageable tasks. For example, if I'm saying, okay, I want to get good at speaking Japanese, then breaking it down would maybe be, okay, first I will just try to shadow a podcast, for example, or a TV show. Then I will just try to talk to myself. then maybe discover vocabulary I always want to use but I don't know yet. And then maybe the next step would be to talk to a native speaker or like some other language learner, for example, and have some like real life conversation. And having it broken down in those steps, first of all, makes it less overwhelming and shows you like the little progressions you can take towards your goal, and also gives you a starting point, like something you can do right away that is the next actionable step to take. But be careful, because for some people, breaking down goals can even make them feel more overwhelming, especially if you break them down too far. So this is also something where you have to experiment and see what works for you. And if you still don't know where to start, it might be a good idea to look for inspiration online, maybe follow some study grammar, or you can follow my channel, for example, and see how I'm studying Japanese, and then see, okay, those are the methods that I could use, and then experiment and see which ones are working for you. One thing that also works wonders for me is to have my weekly study plan, because when I sit down on Sunday and write down what I want to do in the following week, I don't have to sit at my desk and constantly think about, okay, now I have time to study. Which resource should I use? What should I be doing? Where was I the last time I studied? So this takes a lot of friction out of language learning for me. And I also did a video on my 2024 goals for Japanese, where I showed you how I break down the things I want to achieve into every weekday, so that I have certain tasks on a certain weekday I want to ideally do. So this also helps me to see, okay, today's Monday, so this means I have to do this, this and that. So it also makes it less overwhelming to come up with my own like schedule and stuff every time. The next issue is wanting to do everything at once. And to be honest, I can't give you a lot of tips for that, because this is something I struggle with a lot. I think the most logical thing would be to prioritize, of course, but for people with executive dysfunction, it can be really hard to like make the proper prioritization and to stick to it. So maybe you can share your experiences in the comments below. I would also really appreciate if you talk about like how you prioritize or how you overcame your struggle with prioritization. So let me know in the comments below. The last issue is the lack of motivation. And since I've already done a video about how I stay motivated to study Japanese, which I will link there, I will try to keep it really short, but basically the main idea that helps me the most is to know my why. Why am I studying Japanese? What do I want to accomplish? Why do I want to accomplish this? Why is this important for me as a person? To just have this clear in my head, it really helps to just get more internal motivation. But there are also other things that you could use that may be helpful. For example, seeking accountability partners who will say, hey, you told me you want to do one chapter of your Japanese textbook this week. Have you done this already? And if not, why not? How do you plan on like being better next week, for example? And also one thing that really helped me is tracking my progress, because I have a study grammar account on Instagram where I talk about my experiences with learning Japanese by myself. And looking back on older posts I've made, I oftentimes realized that something that was really hard for me a year ago is now quite easy for me. And this also is definitely motivating, because on a day-to-day basis I don't see my improvement that much. But if I look back and compare it to a year ago, I see that I've made substantial progress and that my language learning strategies do work. So I would also recommend to document your experiences, maybe in a language learning journal, or maybe also on Instagram if you want to. Please also remember that overcoming procrastination is a journey, and this is not something you can just get rid of overnight. So if procrastination comes up, don't punish yourself, forgive yourself, move on, and also celebrate your small wins, for example, the days where you didn't procrastinate. Since consistency is key, try to stay committed to your now much smaller goals and enjoy the process. Try out different study methods and see what works for you. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you know someone who could also benefit from this video, please share it with them. And if you want to know more about how I study Japanese by myself, I will link you another video and also a playlist right here, so make sure to check them out. Thank you so much for watching till the end of the video, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye bye!